today's video, we're going to be talking about histograms and box plots, and we're also going to be doing them by hand and looking at them in Desmos. So a histogram has several characteristics that are different from what we would consider a bar graph. So a histogram, if you notice, has no spaces in between each column. And each column represents an interval. So normally, like with a bar graph, you would have this particular value or this particular category, and it would show that value of how many. But with a histogram, we have, let's say it says age group in years, and I have 0 to 5. So 0 to 5 is an interval. Okay, then we have 6 to 10, there's an interval there. And then the height of the actual bar is the frequency in which something occurs within that interval. So when we're looking at this, we have M&Ms as favorite candy. So if we look at 0 to 5, we can see that that frequency looks like it's less than 5 people that like M&Ms as their favorite. As we go from age group from 6 to 10, it's a little bit over half, so probably in the 27 range of people that have M&Ms as their favorite candy. And as we continue on, we have 11 to 15. The largest group that has M&Ms as their favorite candy is 16 to 20. 50 people like the M&Ms candy. And of course, with a histogram, we can calculate things like mean, median, quartile, standard deviation, and so forth. So we're going to look at an example, and we are actually going to create our own histogram by hand. So it says the number of wins for the 29 teams of the NBA between 2000 and 2001 season has been recorded into a frequency table. So they want us to make a histogram. So 11 to 20 means how many teams in the NBA won 11 to 20 times, and 3 teams occurred. Then I have 21 to 30. So 21 to 30 wins, 4 teams that happen. So when we label this, we want to label our axis here. This is going to be the number of wins. Okay. And then for our y-axis is going to be number of teams, because our frequency is how many teams had that many wins. Now remember what I said, that with histograms, we're doing an interval. So this first interval that we're going to be looking at the interval from 11 to 20. So how many times did 11 to 20 happen? Well, we have 1. All right, so we need a scale to go up to 10. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, so we have 5 sections. Let's do it in groups of 2. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, and the top one would be 10. So in this first histogram, we would only have 3 in this first bar in that category. So 3 teams won between 11 and 20 times. All right, so then we have our next interval. So we have 21 to 30. So 21 to 30, we had 4 teams that won that. So this interval right here is this bar. Same thing occurred 4 times with 31 to 40. And I'm going to go ahead and label these. And if you notice, they don't rewrite the ending value. So if we end at 40, the next interval has to start with the next number up, so 41. If we're ending at 50, we need to start with the next number up to 51. All right, so from 30 to 40, we have another 4. (41 to 50 is 10 this time, so that's our largest category. And 51 to 60 is going to be 8. All right, so there's our histogram. But why do we need the histogram? So a histogram can help us answer lots of questions about how often something occurs. So it says how many teams won more than 30 games. So more than 30. So more than 30 would be 31 and up. So how many times did that happen? Well, I have 4, 10, and 8. So that's going to give me 22 teams that occurred. Or I could look at the histogram down here. So right here is where 30 or more, and then go this way. Okay? So the next question, what is the greatest number of wins by a team? Really and truly, we can't answer that question. Because when I'm looking at this, it says that the interval for the number of wins is 51 to 60. I don't know if all those teams won, all 8 of those teams won 51 times, or I don't know if one won 52. I don't know if one won 60 times. I don't really know. All I know is the number of wins for the interval from 51 to 60. Not enough information type of question. Just because my interval goes up to 60, that doesn't necessarily mean that the number of wins went up to 60, because my intervals have to be equal when I set them up. So when I started with 10-digit when I started with 10s in my intervals, going from 11 to 20, 21 to 30, I had to go from 51 to 60. So I don't know the greatest number of wins in that. I know the 8 team won between 51 and 60, but I don't know the greatest number of wins by a single team. What I do know is that the interval of 41 to 41 to 50 was the largest amount of teams that won in that category. That's the only thing I can say. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is a box and whisker. So we're actually going to look at a box and whisker. We're going to talk about what it is, and then we're going to look at what a box and whisker does, like what do the pieces mean, and then I'm actually going to show you a little bit more on Desmos. So when we talk about a box and whiskers, it shows the variability of a data set along a number line. You can figure out the least value, you can figure out the greatest value, and we have quartile values. So quartile values are what divide your box and whisker into 4 equal parts. So each part of a box and whisker is worth 25%. So that is the most common mistake that students make. They think that because a section is bigger than another section, it's worth more value points, and it's not. Every section in a box and whisker is worth 25%. I could have a box and whisker that looks like this, and this long piece right here is still only worth 25. Because we're going to split up our numbers into 4 equal sections. The length of a box or a length of a whisker is just depending on how spread out your numbers are. The number 10, and then I have the number 25. So the length of your box and whisker just tell you how spread out your numbers are, but each section of a box and whisker is worth 25%. It is split up into 4 equal parts. Now, we also have what we call a 5-number summary. So a 5-number summary is 5 numbers that we need to find. That's going to be your maximum, your minimum, what we call Q1. Q1 is the first quartile. Q3 is your third quartile or upper quartile. And then we have the median. So we have our whiskers over here on the outside. And then we're going to have the middle, which is our median. And then our first quartile and our third quartile. Those are separated by the outsides in the middle of the box. All right, so what we're going to do is these are labeled in steps, so you can kind of see where we're at. But I put them in the order that you should see them. So like minimum and maximum should be on the outside whiskers. Q1 is your first quartile. Q3 is your third quartile, and then the median. But if you look at the numbers kind of show what order you should do it when you're setting these up. Alright, so to start this off, we're going to find our median, and we're going to then find our minimum and our maximum and identify those. But we need to first put everything in order from least to greatest. If you don't put it in order from least to greatest, then that's already going to make your all right, to start off with this one, we're going to find our median, and we're going to identify our maximum minimum. And we need to make sure we put it in order from least to greatest. If we don't put it in order from least to greatest, then you're already starting your box plot off wrong. So our minimum and maximum, if we're putting this in order, should be easy to identify. Once we have completed that set of numbers. All right, so I've listed my orders from least to greatest. Make sure your numbers are... All right, so I've listed my numbers from least to greatest. Just make sure you have the same amount. So I started off with 11 numbers, and I do have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So I have 11 total. All right, so we're going to be writing our 5-number summary. So we have our minimum, we have Q1, we have our median, Q3, and we have our maximum. So our median is where we're going to start with. So we're going to start from the outside. So if we have 11 numbers, the 6th number should be the middle. Okay, because when we have odd numbers, we would have an exact middle number. When we have an even set of numbers, then we're going to have to find the average of the two. So 1 and 10, 2 and 9, 3 and 8, 4 and 7, 4 and 6, and then we come to that middle 6th number, which is going to be 5. So I'm going to box that just to remind myself that that is the median. I also know that my minimum is 1 and my maximum is 10. Now, this is where you need to be extremely careful because we're now going to find Q1 and Q3. So Q1 is going to be the middle of your lower set of numbers. So the middle of your lower set. Now, I'm not going to use 5 because I've already used 5 as a middle, as the median. All right, so I've already used 5, so I'm not going to use that as a median again. So we're going to start and we're going to find the middle number again. So I have 1 and 4, 2 and 4, and that middle number for the lower half is 3. So that's going to be my Q1. I'm going to do the exact same thing for my upper half. Again, I'm not going to use 5. And I'm going to compare. So I have 2 and 10, 7 and 8, or 7 and 9, and that middle number, that Q3, that upper quartile, is going to be 8. So now all we'll do is put all this information together. So my lower half is my whisker, that's at 1. My upper maximum is a whisker, so that's going to be 10. Then I need to do my Q1, Q3, and my median. So my Q1 is at 3, so that's the lower part of the box. My median is at 5, that's the middle of the box. And then my Q3 is 8, that's the upper part of the box. So connect. And there's my box and whisker. Now, how can I do this in Desmos? So in Desmos, you first have to put the list of numbers. So if I put my list of numbers, I normally like to give it, well, you have to give it a label, but I like to use L for list. You can use anything, but I like to use L. You have to use the square brackets, okay, in order to do this. Now, the great thing about Desmos is that if I go back and look at my original set of numbers, so I'm going to kind of erase a little bit, I can put the numbers in just as I see them originally. I don't have to put them in order to put them in Desmos and see my box and whisker. All right, so I see 11 elements in a list, so that means 11 numbers. So I'm going to go to Function, and under Function, I'm going to go to Distribution. So we can do a histogram, a dot plot, or a box plot. They don't call it a box and whisker, so we're just going to select box plot, and it says enter the data set. Well, we labeled the data set L, so we're going to put L. And there's my box and whisker. Now the other thing about Desmos and doing a box and whisker is you can't click it to figure out the number. But how can I can use Desmos to find you can't click it to find the 5-number summary. So what we can do though is we can find our 5-number summary in Desmos. So again, I can go to function. This time I'm going to go to stats, and under stats I'm going to do list L again, and it will give me my 5-number summary, my minimum, my Q1, my median, my Q3, and my maximum, which is exactly what we got.